Keith Urban, the soul Nicole Kidman has held through chaos and calm, now faces the most brutal health crisis of his life, a turn that's shaken their quiet world and ours. Can love that refused a wedding ring, yet rewrote what devotion looks like, carry them through this unthinkable chapter? The morning that news like this seeps into the world doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives with hush. A driver idles a little longer by the curb. A studio postpones a table read with a polite note that says nothing and everything. Someone at a cafe recognizes her, the black coat, the pale profile, the careful sunglasses, and chooses not to ask for a photo. For weeks now, those close to the couple say schedules have become softer, flexible in only one direction, toward home. You can almost hear it in the way Nicole's footsteps sound on the hardwood when she crosses to the kitchen. Softer, unhurried, the kettle set down as if sound itself could bruise. There are reports of Keith canceling private commitments first. A studio day he'd promised to a friend, a surprise drop-in at a small Nashville room he loves because the ceiling is low and the audience breathes like one body. There are whispers of late-night drives down side streets to avoid the bigger roads, the ones where a single picture could become a story that doesn't belong to them. You do what you must when life narrows to the size of a hand you can hold, a breath you can count. Projects shift. A prestige role that would have demanded 3 countries in 5 months is quietly delayed. Another hears not now and understands. In a house that usually floats on music and marked up scripts, the center of gravity has moved to the sofa, to a worn throw, to the way the afternoon light hits the mantel at 3:17 p.m., to the gentle knock before entering the studio, where a guitar leans like a loyal dog waiting at the door. But what shaped a life strong enough to face this? Nicole's beginning reads like a postcard with the edges thumbed soft by time. Honolulu first breath, Sydney babyhood, the scent of eucalyptus outside school windows, the hum of planes lifting and landing like promises. Her parents taught a specific kind of ambition, not the sparkle-chasing kind, the other kind, the one that says work is the respect you pay your gift. She was the tall girl who felt taller than the room, the pale kid who learned to watch before she spoke. In church halls and community centers, she found the quiet chair by the exit and mapped the adults, who told the truth, who performed it. A first wound arrived like so many do. The ordinary ache of being out of step with the age you're in, the tongue that tripped over words when feelings were too big for the sentence. She learned to count breaths backstage, 5 in, 5 out, while a second-hand coat swallowed her shoulders whole, and a borrowed lipstick gave her courage in a mirror that wobbled. What saved her wasn't a thunderclap. It was a small, precise gift. A teacher, one of those stubborn angels every life needs, placed a stapled script in her hands and said, "You don't have to be yourself for 22 pages." The paper smelled like toner and coffee. She traced the title with a fingernail and felt something unhook inside. At home, she read the lines aloud with a hairbrush as a microphone, pacing between a couch with a spring that squeaked and a window that showed the ocean if you stood on tiptoe. And she realized acting wasn't hiding. It was finally being seen. Rejections came in neat stacks and messy whispers. Too tall for the boy we cast. Too delicate for this one. Not American enough for the accent we want. Not Australian enough for the cliche we're selling. Odd jobs paid phone bills and acting classes. Ushering in theaters where she mouthed the monologues from the back row. Handing out flyers under a sun that bleached everything flat. Walking home with blistered heels and a head full of lines. A near break fizzled when a promised call became a polite silence. Another almost arrived wearing a producer's grin and a contract that would have pinned her to a version of herself that didn't fit. She took tiny parts and built them like cathedrals, one truthful moment at a time. But here's where it gets complicated. You can do everything right. The accent work, the posture, the breath, the study of hands and eyes, and still watch doors swing shut. She learned to slip sideways, to reinvent the silhouette. There was a sea thriller, lean, tense, the kind of part that turns a face into a map you can't stop reading. There was a director who loved rhythm, who spoke not only about dialogue but about the measure between syllables. There was a decision to stop competing with the version of her that rooms seemed to want and to offer the version that told the truth instead. A partnership sharpened what was raw, the choice to let stillness carry a scene, the willingness to let imperfection crack the lacquer and let the person shine through. You could feel it in the way she learned to leave air in the line, to trust the camera would find the thought before the word. Then success arrived the way it often does, too loud, too bright, and slightly off-key. Suddenly, the world decided what she was. The porcelain star, the red carpet myth, the icy blonde with eyes like winter glass. The image was addictive in the way sugar is. It spiked and crashed and left you hollow. She won what people call breakthroughs, those career seismic shifts that set a path in stone, and discovered that stone is heavy to drag behind you. Was she the person in the poster, or the woman who preferred a quiet kitchen table at midnight with a script and a pencil? Identity versus role. Who gets to choose? A public triumph, an award, a night-lit gold, a speech where her voice shook once and only once, deepened a private fracture she didn't perform for anyone. The sense that the more the world looked, the less it saw. You could spot it if you looked carefully, in the way she touched a ring and then moved her hand away, in the way her smile always landed half a second after her eyes. Fame is a crowd with a megaphone. Home is a hand on your back when you're not looking, and finding the second would change everything. He entered not like a plot twist, but like a steady drum you notice only when it stops. Keith Urban, guitar pick in his pocket, a laugh with edges sanded by gratitude. The kind of gentleness that feels like competence rather than performance. Love in their house looked like ordinary devotion. A mug placed where the other person likes it, a note tucked against a metronome, a jacket lifted quietly from a sleeping shoulder at 2 a.m. so the person sleeping doesn't wake cold. They built a life that walked past the clatter. There was the wedding that felt smaller than the headlines it created, because what mattered lived in the vows only they heard in the back of their throats. There were daughters whose artwork magnetized to the refrigerator like a private museum of joy. There were mornings when the dog's paws clicked on the floorboards, and afternoons when guitar strings sounded like sun on wood. She made choices the world labeled surprising, turning down brilliant parts because the time didn't align with the season their family was in, asking to shoot closer to home, reading scripts with a watch on the table, and a rule: no role that demanded the cost of missing essential days. Insiders say there were offers with numbers that looked like phone numbers. Maybe she said, "Not this one, not now," and the world said, "Unthinkable," and the people at her table said, "Wise." He learned the cadence of her work, the way she disappears into a role without leaving the room, and she learned the cadence of his, tour buses and green rooms and the holy hush before a first chord at a sold-out show. In a world that rewards spectacle, they chose a quieter superstardom, and that's when everything changed. The blow does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives on a Tuesday at 4:02 p.m. when the studio lights are off and the house is filled with a kind of listening silence. Reports speak of a diagnosis, the kind that reduces a calendar to one day at a time. Not clinical words, never those, but the human ones. Tired, more tired than usual, a hand that rubs the bridge of the nose, a gaze that lingers an extra second on nothing in particular. There are pictures of him in hats he's always loved, but now they seem to sit lower on his brow, as if he's shielding himself from more than the sun. There's the familiar guitar on its stand, a pick wedged into the strings at the 12th fret, a bookmark in a song paused mid-verse. Time, which used to stretch like a road, shrinks to the size of a room. He cancels, first quietly and then publicly, and the feed fills with kindnesses and questions and, inevitably, noise. Nicole moves like a woman who knows exactly where she's going and why. She looks at the calendar and removes more than she adds. The world continues to offer. It always does. And she continues to measure every ask against the one answer that matters. Here, we are here. Facing time's arrow means choosing how to spend the hours you can count with your fingers and feel with your face. So they return to first principles. The resilience she learned as a girl who grew too tall for her skin becomes a reservoir. She writes letters by hand because ink slows thought enough to be honest. She takes walks that follow the same route, Left at the lilac bush, right at the mailbox with the dent, because ritual eases the mind. At the kitchen table, where she once mapped a character's arc with a pencil and a ruler, she now maps meals and medications and the soft architecture of days that hold. He practices not to perform, but to feel the strings under his fingers, to remind his hands who they've always been. The dog adopts a new schedule, guarding the door between rooms as if love could be kept in and pain kept out by four careful paws. What endures when applause fades and premieres become memories? What does love remember when the mind is full and the heart is tired? The answers are small by design. A guitar pick left on a saucer by the sink, a sweater stealing the other's scent, the way one person can track another's mood by the way they close a drawer. There is faith, sometimes spoken, often not, a steadying breath that says, thank you for this day, and this one, and this one. Now, if you're wondering how they navigate the fog outside while keeping the light inside, the answer is discipline as much as tenderness. The public fog is real and thick. Rumors expand to fit the container they're given, and the internet is an ocean without shores. One blurred photo becomes a narrative. One sentence out of context becomes a diagnosis that strangers say out loud as if saying it could make it less scary. Look closely at the images that matter. Her hand on his at a charity event. Fingers interlaced with the kind of pressure you only use when you're saying I'm here without making a sound. The way he leans, not because he has to, but because that's what you do when another body is your anchor. The quieter choices tell you more than a headline can. She doesn't perform stoicism, she practices it. It helps to keep a ledger, not of awards or numbers, but of moments. Ledger of a Life is the scene where she stands in a wind-whipped field in a film about grief and lets a single tear tell the entire backstory. It's the scene where she dances in a red dress and convinces the world that love can survive poverty, patriarchy, and Parisian dawns. It's the night he played a tiny club off the main road because a friend's friend had a record to finish and needed a hand. It's a girl from Brisbane seeing a girl like herself win something the world once said she was too much or not enough for, and feeling a door open she'd never noticed before. It's a veteran who says Keith's song carried him through a night he didn't think he could carry himself through. It's a daughter's drawing of a guitar with stars around it and the word dad written 5 times because 5 is how you show forever when you're little. A colleague remembers a rehearsal where she stayed 2 hours late to help a young actor find the breath between 2 lines. A makeup artist remembers how gently she removed her own lipstick with the edge of a tissue so it wouldn't stain a costume some other department had labored over for weeks. A crew member remembers that she learned every name on a 40-person list by the 3rd day and used each one like a gift on set. A songwriter remembers Keith leaning back after a take and saying, "That's the road I want to live on," about a melody as if melodies had zip codes. A fan remembers a meet and greet where he didn't meet or greet but stood 3 yards back because grief made him shy, and Keith caught his eye and nodded like he'd just shaken his hand. Who were they to us? Who are they to each other? The questions are not the same, and the answers do not compete. One belongs to the culture, the other belongs to the kitchen table. If goodbye comes, if it comes, it will not arrive the way gossip thinks it will. It will arrive as a chair pulled a little farther back from the table than usual, as a jacket left on the back of that chair because the person who wore it meant to come right back, as a dog who waits at a door long after the house has learned the new shape of its quiet. It will arrive as a room that still smells like citrus and cedar because that was always his cologne. And as a guitar lifted tenderly and placed somewhere, it can be both seen and safe. But here's where it gets complicated. Love doesn't end, it changes form. If goodbye comes, it will be a word they say to time, not to each other. They will speak to one another in the present tense because the present is where their best days live. And if goodbye doesn't come, not yet, not soon, they will continue to do what they've become excellent at, living like the ordinary is holy. She will read aloud to him from a novel she loves, doing the voices, making him smile even on the days the smile has to fight for room. He will write a line of melody on a napkin and slide it toward her with that look that asks, "Is this anything?" And she will nod because she hears the whole song already, even before he does. You can measure a life by its opening weekends and chart positions, by statues that look heavy when you hold them, by special editions and remasters and restorations. Or you can measure it by the way a person holds your gaze when you are not performing for them, by the way they say your name as if it were a small country you both invented. Nicole's life has been proof that a person can exist in both ledgers without losing herself to either. Her craft has always been a mirror angled toward the truth rather than toward the light. Keith's music has always been a roadmap to the heart's back roads, the ones GPS can't find. Together they learn that home is less a place than a practice. There is a watch on the kitchen counter, face down, as if time is something you can outwit by not looking directly at it. There is a soft-stitched leather journal with a ribbon marking a page. Her handwriting slanted, clean, a note about a scene she might never film, and a reminder to buy more lemons. There is a ceramic bowl with 3 guitar picks at the bottom, like coins at a wishing well, each one worn at the tip in a way that tells its own story. In a hallway, there are framed photos where you can watch them get younger and older at once. Because love does that to a face, it rearranges it around the eyes. And outside their door, life insists on being what it is. Buses and birds and delivery vans and rain that has no idea whose roof it's singing on. The world, indifferent and beautiful, keeps going. Inside, a kettle clicks, and a door hinges open quietly, and someone asks, "Do you want tea?" And someone answers, "Yes, please." And that is what surviving looks like when you strip it of poetry. The exchange of small kindnesses at regular intervals. You may be wondering, one last quiet question, how a woman who once set an entire theater alight with a whisper carries herself when the audience is only one person and the theater is their living room. The answer is she does what she has always done. She tells the truth. She makes the truth beautiful enough to bear. And she carries the heavy things in a way that makes you think you could carry them too. If you look back over the whole of it, the girl counting breaths backstage, the woman who turned the world's gaze into a tool instead of a trap, the wife who learned the language of her husband's music as if marriage were a bilingual country, it all points to this. Not an ending, not yet, but a chapter that requires fluency and presence. Whenever the camera finds her now, what it catches is not glamour, but grit warmed by grace. Whenever a microphone finds him, what it captures is a voice sanding the rough edge off fear. There is a reason people all over the world, from Karachi to Kansas, feel so personally implicated by what celebrities endure. It isn't the spectacle, it's the mirror. We watch them because we're trying to learn how to live. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban have been teaching a masterclass in that for years without calling it a class. Show up. Apologize when you must. Say yes to the better thing, even when it's the smaller one. Sit with the person you love when the clock is unkind and the news is complicated. Tune the guitar. Boil the kettle. Keep the picks in the bowl by the door so you can grab one when a melody taps your shoulder at 11:40 p.m. Maybe the next time she speaks in public about this chapter, it will be in a voice that has found a new register. Lower, warmer, steadier, as if grief has been tuning it by ear. Maybe the next time he steps onto a stage, it will be a surprise. A single song that ends in a standing silence, instead of an ovation because the audience knows the clatter would break the spell. Maybe they will let us see a picture of the bowl of picks, or the journal ribbon, or the dog asleep in a sun puddle big enough for 2, or maybe they will not, and that will be their best boundary yet. Until then, all of us, those who have loved her work since a red dress spun under impossible lights, and those who found her through roles where she stripped her glamour down to bone, have a simple role. We lighten their load by not adding weight to it. We don't guess at words that aren't ours to say. We let the music speak where it can, and the silence where it must. We remember that the biggest acts of devotion are invisible to cameras and algorithms. A forehead kiss given as you pass in a hallway, a thumb smoothing a worry line, a hand opening a door before the other hand reaches for the knob. Whatever time gives or takes from here, one thing won't move: the way their story lives in yours. If that light ever found you in the dark, leave one more for them before you go. If you want more stories told with care, join us here.